In our previous lecture, we learnt about the different project types and went on to creating our first project. Once we did, it then generated our project into Xcode and its Xcode view itself. Now there's lots of things going on in our project, as you can see, and at first it can look a little bit daunting and confusing. Over the next coming lectures, we're going to be breaking down each section and understanding it a little bit better, so developing applications kind of becomes second nature when using Xcode. In this lecture, we're going to be focusing on the different classes that get generated in our project when we go to create it. Now the classes are located on the left hand side of our project. Now you need to know when you select a language, whether you're selecting Objective-C or Swift, depending on which one you select, you then get generated a different style of classes within your application. So as you can see here, this is a Objective-C generated application. If I now bring up my Swift version, you can now see if you combine the two, looking at the different classes, we have an application .h and .m, a view controller.h and .m within our Objective-C project. Within our Swift project, we have an app.delegate.swift and view controller.swift. Now the reason for being this is Swift projects, they combine what Objective-C projects have in a view controller H and .m, and they combined it into one kind of format. So within our Objective-C class here, we're going to talk about the different files first before we kind of talk about it within Swift. So these files, the .h of the app delegates and .ms of our view controllers here, the app delegates and view controllers .h and .m, these are used to add code to our projects. Now we have a main.storyboard. These main.storyboards is what's used to basically design and configure the look of our interfaces within our applications. It's the views where we add our objects and design how our application looks and runs. Now we talk about our interface builders in greater detail in the next lecture. Now each view that gets generated or we add within our storyboard has to be controlled by a class. Now, the class that controls a view is a storyboard, and in an Objective-C project, we have a .h and a .m to control this view. Now, within the .h is where we reference the objects that exist within the view. So if we add a button to our view, then we then have to reference it within the .h to say the button exists. If you then want your button to, let's say for example, play a sound file, then within the .m, we then get the button that's been referenced within the .h and then say this button, when pressed, will play a sound file. Now this works a little bit differently in Swift. As you can see within Swift, we only have a view controller.swift. But it combines both the .h and .m like it does within the Objective-C. So within Swift, we do it a little bit differently. At the top is the header to where we reference our objects such as a button. Then at the bottom is considered the .m, where we then tell that button what it does, such as playing a kind of sound file. So these Swift projects, they combined the .h and .m into one class to be a little bit more efficient, and they work a little bit differently. The same goes for the application delegate.swift, whereas in the Objective-C version we have a .h and .m. Now the difference between the app delegate and the view controller is the view controller solely controls an individual view within our application, whereas the app delegate controls our application as a whole. So for example, the view controller controls the buttons within the view, whereas the application delegate, that can control what the application does when it first loads up, and even what it does when it closes. And you can overall customize your application's look solely from the app delegate and control multiple views from within it. So just like the view controller, we have a H and M, a header and a main, which we can reference objects. As you can see, already referenced in here is our window, which is the view of our application itself. Then within the .m, we have all the configurations to set it up to perform actions if it kind of first loads up or even closes. Now within our Swift project, you can see that the app delegate is then combined with the .h and .m of the Objective-C to display all within one. Now it works the same as well, where you reference the outlets at the top, which will be the .h, and then the .m is underneath for the main. Also, we have the assets.x cassettes. Now you get these in both formats of the projects in both Swift and Objective-C. This is used for when you want to display such things as your images like app icons. It's a great place to add it all in, and we're going to talk about how to add images to it and app icons further on in the course when we come to designing and implementing and adding in images to display as our icons for our project. We also have a launch screen, which again you get this generated in both versions of the project. Now what this launch screen is just like our main.storyboard. It's an interface where you can design to be used to display within the app. Now the launch screen is only solely displayed as the application loads up. Think of it as a loading screen. So when that brief period from when your user presses your icon to the moment they first start interacting with your application, the launch screen is kind of put in place to kind of give your users a visual effect when the application is loading up. And it's using a .storyboard because it's basically an interface, and we can design and create it just like an interface by adding objects and images and just kind of generally giving it a custom design. Finally, we have our info.plist. Now what this is, as you can see here, it's our property list. It's all the information that's been added into our project. Now as you progress and develop your application further, and whether you add more stuff or take stuff away, your property list will either get bigger or smaller. As you can see, already selected down here, I've made sure that you can kind of see here, it's supported in our interfaces. So our supported interface orientations pre-generated in our application allow us to rotate the landscape both ways and even have it in portrait. So it just shows you the information within the property list, what kind of orientations our application is enabled to do. It even says stuff like our main storyboard file base name is main, which is linked back to our main.storyboard. So this is the main interface that loads up with all our kind of views within our application. The same goes for our launch screen. It's linked to our launch screen.storyboard. So it just shows you all the information linked to our application is stored within this property list. Now again, if you progress throughout the course and you add more and more stuff to your application, your property list is going to get bigger as you add more information to it. Now, like I mentioned previously, within our main.storyboard, we've briefly talked about this and how we can customize it to add kind of objects to it to design our interfaces. And in the next lecture, we're going to talk about it more in depth, not only adding the objects to design our interfaces, but how to customize the objects and change the attributes from within it, and just to generally get a greater understanding of the interface builder and how we can use it to design our applications.